Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 129, recorded on August 4th, 2021. The Cloud Pod ditches our m1.small instances. Welcome, guys. We have quorum today, finally. Peter, Ryan, and Jonathan all at the same time. I don't know. Like, some of you guys are strangers to me. I've been here all this time, and you guys have all been gone. I really need to schedule more vacation in the summer, clearly, because all of you guys are taking advantage of the summer breaks, and I'm not. But that's okay. But we've had a great group of guest hosts, followed by Matt Cohn and Sarah Tamburella from Foghorn jumped in for Peter a couple times, and then we just ignored the fact that Jonathan was missing for weeks. But
no one can replace me, clearly.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And then Ryan, he was down at Disney, doing the mouse thing, and so we just heard the screams in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that was great.
Turns out it's still a small world.
Yeah.
It is still a very small world. Well, we have a bunch of news this week, and up first is, of course, our friend earnings season. And earnings are here once again with, first up, Google, or aka Alphabet, even though I still can't get used to that whole mess. Google apparently crushed the Wall Street expectations as it saw dramatic advertising growth amid the pandemic bounce back. And YouTube apparently led the revenue with $7 billion, up from 83% last year, nearing Netflix in quality of revenue. So that's quite a bit. Their total revenue was $61.88 billion versus $56.16 billion the year before. And $4.63 billion of that came from Google Cloud. Up from $3.01 billion a year ago. The cloud business had an operating loss of $591 million, which is a huge improvement over a year ago when it was a $1.43 billion loss. I wish I could have a $1.43 billion loss and the bank wouldn't just repossess me.
They're losing their own money, not the bank's money. That's the difference.
Yeah, very true.
If only they put the price of YouTube TV up at just a little bit more, they might not have lost quite so much this year.
Yeah.
It's actually cheaper to go back to, like if you're okay with without the flexible contracts, it's cheaper to go back to Dish anymore for all the same stations, and you get 4K, because now they want to charge more for 4K as well. So I'm kind of feeling a bit cheated by Google.
Yeah, we're all like, let's cut the cord, get rid of Comcast and all these other cable providers. Now I'm paying $15 a month to everybody under the sun.
Yep,
Exactly.
I'm paying the same $200 a month I used to spend to that.
But now it's my choice, at least.
That's true. And if I'm unhappy with your content, I can just cancel you versus my whole package. So, or in the old days, I just ignored those channels. I just didn't go there. I don't care what you have to say. All right, well, let's move on to Microsoft. Microsoft had earnings of $2.17 per share, although Wall Street predicted that'd only be $1.92. So that means that Wall Street sucks and Microsoft beat their estimates, which is always good. This is on revenue of $46.15 billion. Revenue was up 21% year over year, which is pretty impressive. And Microsoft's Intelligent Cloud segment, which includes the Azure Public Cloud, Windows Server, SQL Server, and GitHub, produced $17.38 billion in revenue, up 30% year over year. And Azure revenue grew about 51% for the quarter, which is pretty good.
Wow. So the revenue doubled in Azure, huh?
That's what they said.
That's crazy.
And then the final quarter of Amazon under Jeff Bezos, they only had earnings of $15.12 per share on $113.08 billion in revenue. Although Wall Street was unhappy with this because they predicted $115.2 billion. So, of course, their stock got tanked after this. Overall revenue growth was 27% year over year to the $113 billion I just mentioned, which is down from the 41% year over year growth from the year prior, which was, COVID related maybe, and everyone buying everything they needed from the internet.
Yeah.
So, the CFO actually said in the earnings call that we're starting to see some of those corrections from post-COVID, that, you're just not going to see those kind of growth numbers that you saw before during the COVID year. AWS itself, though, grew its revenue 37% in the second quarter. Last quarter, if you remember, was only 32%. And a few quarters ago, it was 29%. So they're actually doing pretty well on the Amazon Web Services side. AWS revenue was $14.8 billion of the total revenue for AWS.
I wonder if any other company that's over $100 billion a year in revenue grew 27% year over year last year.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I think BioNTech are doing pretty well this year.
Funny, I saw that Bezos is no longer the richest person this morning because their stock fell after the earnings call, and so unfortunately the owner of all the very fancy fashion brands, Louis Vuitton and a bunch of others, is now the number one billionaire on the planet. Until at least Amazon stock recovers, and then Andy Jassy will be right back on top. So just a matter of time. All right, let's move on to main show topics. It's Magic Quadrant season. The 11th Magic Quadrant for Infrastructure and Platform Service, or SIPS, as they call it, has been published. And can any of you guys guess who maybe won it for 11th time in a row?
Probably Gartner.
Who would it be?
Yeah. It's too bad that wasn't lightning round.
Right.
We need a sound actually for the Magic Quadrant. We have a sound for the earnings call. We should have a sound for Magic Quadrant.
We do. We should have one for the Magic Quadrant. Yeah.
Some kind of like
twinkling
noise thing.
Just warn me next time so I can take my earbuds out. That was so loud.
Well, of course, Amazon won it again for the 11th time in a row. Last year, the Magic Quadrant was expanded beyond just infrastructure as a service to include platform as a service, as well as managed databases, serverless computing, and developer tools. And so AWS is right up there on the top right, which is quite interesting. A little bit interesting. We'll talk about Azure in a little bit, but Amazon was actually in the top right position, but Azure was actually just a little bit below them on the chart on the from the right axis, which I believe is the completeness of vision axis, but it was lacking on the ability to execute compared to AWS. But if Azure can figure out how to execute, which is Microsoft, so no hope there, they could definitely improve quite a bit and potentially pass AWS in the Magic Quadrant if they could just get their execution under control.
That's because they're all still using IE 11.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course, there's strengths and weaknesses, and we're not going to go through all of them because I'm sure Magic Quadrant would reach out to us and say, don't do that, because we want you to pay for the report, which is lots of money. But one of the ones that caught my eye on this one was in the caution section. They mentioned challenging renewals, and they report that dozens of Gartner clients across multiple geographies have said that to renew their EDPs, they've been pushed to have an annual spend increase of 20% to get those new EDPs renewed, which I kind of heard in the past a little bit. From sales reps and things like that. If you want to renew your EDP, you need to have some type of growth to it. You need to have, because Amazon doesn't want to just keep renewing you at the same level. But that's apparently rubbing some people the wrong way, and who are customers of Gartner, which is interesting enough that it showed up on this report, which is one of the few that I've seen complain about this issue. I don't see a lot of it on Twitter. I don't see a lot of it on Reddit or any other places AWS people complain about AWS. So very interesting to see it show up in the Magic Quadrant.
Yeah, I remember the 20% renewal growth push like from the beginning of EDPs, but I don't think it mattered before because everybody had so many workloads to move that the 20% growth was a no-brainer. Now you end up, if you're already all in, unless your company's growing by 20%, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
And it also depends on how well you model out your spend the first year. I mean, perhaps people were lowballing what they were going to spend and then easily meeting your EDP, and Amazon wanted you to commit to more for the next year. But now we spend a lot of time modeling out exactly how much we think we're going to spend, and I think we do a pretty good job anymore. So I think 20% would be quite an ask. If anything, I'd see it going down year over year as we take advantage of new technology, serverless, and better optimizations.
Yeah, I mean, if you're adopting cloud native and following Amazon's ethos that everything should start costing you less, you should see your dollars starting to reduce.
Yeah.
It's a little bit counterproductive to what they're trying to sell you as a value prop.
Yeah, it's a weird tension between optimize everything and commit to more. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot to do with how you're going to compensate the sales team. You're going to compensate them on just keeping the lights on, or are they supposed to be growing accounts? And I can't imagine Amazon not offering the EDP level pricing to customers that are that large just because they're still not growing. That doesn't make any sense from an Amazon standpoint.
I mean, they might push for it, but I don't know if they'd hold you to the fire on it. Like that's because they're not going to let you just all of a sudden have a 12 or 13% increase in cost because you couldn't get an EDP that made sense. It just doesn't. That's not in their best interest. It's not our best interest as a customer. The other one we talk about here on the show quite a bit, which is about MVPs and how brand new Amazon services are MVPs. And so one of the other cautions that Gartner mentioned was bare bones offerings. And Amazon's new services are often not ready for meaningful enterprise consumption, which we've talked about all the time here on the show. So that one's not a surprise to me, but nice to see Gartner also agreeing with us on that.
I mean, you could just do it Azure and GCP do, and they have these long beta phases where they either charge or they don't charge as much. They don't charge, or they don't charge as much for it before they say it's yes, now we're GA. I mean,
Right.
I like get my hands on it more in all my accounts, not have to request access to specific services and specific accounts all the time. It's nice to have early access. If you're smart, you just realize you just don't start using them for 3 to 6 months.
Exactly, or 2 years.
Or in the case of people still on EC2 Classic, I mean, it's been 9 years now.
Yeah.
VPC safe to use, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a risk, but to me, releasing things early when they're bare bones versus not releasing them at all, if it were my choice, I'd rather have the opportunity to get on them early and just choose not to than have the provider not offer those offerings at all until they're more built out.
Well, it's like the whole mindset of Agile, really, isn't it? Deliver early and often. Start getting feedback as soon as you can.
Yep. So that's like a strength to me, not a weakness.
Yeah.
Great. I think it's all about your perspective of how you look at it. All right. Well, next up is Internet Explorer 11. Amazon has decided to end support for it. Jeff Barr blogs this week about as of July 31st, AWS will no longer support IE 11 for new management console features or guarantee that new web pages will function properly. However, if it was there before July 31st, they will continue to support that until July 31st, 2022. Later this year, it'll start annoying you with a pop-up saying that you should be moving to Chrome, Edge, or Firefox and off of IE 11. Which I don't know who uses Edge, but Firefox or Chrome, great choices. And so then by July 31st, 2022, they will no longer support IE 11 for anything on their console. And so definitely get moving to something more modern at this time. I don't know who anybody's used IE in forever. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
What does IE stand for?
Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
It's everyone who doesn't change the defaults, right, on their new computer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some finance app.
A lot of computers now require, because of the EU stuff, if the computer's going to be sold either in the EU market or in the US, actually, when it first boots up, it has to ask you which browser you would like. And it'll actually help facilitate you downloading the browser you'd like to use versus IE. So it's been
Can you even get IE for a Mac anymore?
No, they discontinued that years ago.
That's awesome.
But they do have Edge for Mac. If you want to use Edge, you can get that. But the thing about Edge and Firefox and Chrome, they're all using the same basic Gecko engine or the hood.
Right.
There's not a lot of difference between them. It's really just user interface and bookmark management and how much spyware they add.
Yeah. Pick your preferred spyware. Yeah,
exactly.
Which is good for us, right?
Yeah, it's always good for us. Yeah. Well, on a topic that none of our hosts care about, AWS has announced the general availability of IoT Sitewise Edge, which is a new feature of AWS IoT Sitewise that provides software that runs on premises at industrial sites and makes it easy to collect, process, and monitor equipment data locally before sending your data to AWS cloud destinations. AWS Sitewise Edge can be installed on local hardware such as third-party industrial gateways and computers, or on AWS Outpost and AWS Snow family compute devices. All this leverages IoT Greengrass and Edge runtime that helps build, deploy, and manage your applications. And as part of the GA, they've added easy setup with your Edge Gateway installer, support for IoT Greengrass v2, and integration with LDAP or AD.
What's interesting is why they would offer this as a service to run on your own hardware outside of AWS, not on an Outpost. Is it?
Sure, it's latency to the device, right?
Is it latency, or is it just testing outside the cloud, or is it the fact that people may need resilience or availability of these monitors and reports, even if the connectivity to Amazon goes down? I mean, we're supposed to be talking about industrial applications. It could be a safety concern if EC2 is down, or if US West 2 is down, or something else. So maybe it's a sort of a risk mitigation strategy.
Yeah,
might just be straight logistics too. Like you might not have the ability to install a rack in the factory floor or wherever you're running this. So,
well, and a lot of times, if you think about manufacturing and PLC computers and PLC, they've tried to start segmenting PLC hardware from networks because it's an attack vector, right? And it's one of the big ways they attacked the Iran nuclear facilities. And was by attacking the PLC computer itself. So there's been a big push in security to actually separate the PLCs from the main network of your plant. And so it's potential that you need to have this in an edge so you can talk to the PLCs, but still then have connectivity back to the cloud for analytics or for data ingestion of some sort. And that's probably why you're looking at a gateway appliance versus a Snow or an Outpost product.
But you're right. You're right. We know nothing about it, and none of us are going to ever use it. So yeah.
I did manufacturing early in my career. It was an interesting space. I don't know that I would go back to manufacturing anytime soon, but it was, there's interesting challenges in how you do manufacturing and PLC computing and all that. It's interesting, but not my area nowadays. Well, this week, AWS is taking a page out of the Killed by Google playbook. Although I don't know if I really agree with that, because AWS has been trying to kill this for years. AWS has finally announced the retirement of EC2 Classic networking. And of course, EC2 Classic was one of the original services launched in 2006 based on one instance type, the m1.small, security groups, and the US East 1 region. The model for EC2 Classic was flat with public IP addresses assigned at launch. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, that this is back in the day when everything had a security group, and that's how you did everything, was through security groups. Yeah. Early on, they added, of course, elastic IPs, auto-scaling, load balancing, and CloudWatch, really the foundations of what became Amazon AWS, to help build highly scalable applications. However, many customers want to connect their EC2 boxes to on-premise networks, exercise more control over their IP addresses, and construct sophisticated network topologies. Fools, all of them. Leading to VPCs in 2009, and eventually VPC for everyone in 2013. As Jeff Barr says, they're giving EC2 Classic a gold watch and sending it out to pasture. So there you go. EC2 Classic, which has been basically dead for any customer who joined the service since 2013. You didn't get EC2 Classic as an option. So if you have this, it's because you've been an Amazon customer for a very, very long time, and your AWS account rep will be reaching out to you on how to get moved off of the EC2 Classic, which is really just as simple as doing some scripts and rebooting your box.
I think I'm going to spin up an m1.small in my original account just to get the call to see what they say, so I know what my customers are going to be in for.
There you go.
Why would anyone still be running on EC2 Classic is my first question.
Because they get stuck, right? They have some workload running on an old version of Linux that there's no VPC version of that operating system available, easy to spin up. And so then they got to upgrade the operating system, but then they've got this old app on it that doesn't support new operating systems and has old Perl libraries that they can't upgrade. And it's just like, just leave it. Just leave it, don't touch it. And then eventually that comes back to bite you. And then it just gets harder and harder and harder, not easier.
I bet it's somebody is depending on some static public IP address that they can't possibly change because they just don't want to tell their customer.
That's part of it, yeah.
Well, and that's one of the nice things I saw in this, actually, was they give you an IP address migration capability. So you can actually move your address to the VPC through a CLI command. Another one that was a big blocker was classic load balancers that had a DNS name that you've somehow locked into. Those weren't able to be moved to VPC, and that you can do that now through a support case, which is pretty nice too.
Yeah, I love how much ease they're really thinking about, for the customers for migration. Like lots of tools, lots of different options for making this easy. Like they knew this was going to be a hard lift for lots of their customers and lots of their like older established customers. So they put a lot of work into making this as easy as possible, which is good.
I'd love to know how many instances are still running. I mean, I almost feel like it's probably so few that they could just have named people in the press release. Hey, Bob, you know who you are. Just shut that damn thing down.
Go look at what customer case studies they were presenting at the first reInvent. Be like, yeah, I bet you're a classic VPC user.
I bet there's more than you think.
There probably is.
I remember hearing stories about banks who still have like a tremendously large amount of passbook accounts that they can't close. And so they have to leave all the systems up and running, like pretty much forever.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
All right, well, things that are new and flashy and shiny. The CDK pipelines are now generally available to you. pipelines for Amazon services apparently are a trend this month, as we talked about. Lots of different pipeline capabilities. And AWS has released the CDK Pipelines, a construct library for CDK that makes it easy to set up simple or complex continuous delivery pipelines with AWS Code Pipeline. The CDK Pipelines development teams can define and share pipelines as code patterns for deploying their applications, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, finally a use case where I'm looking at CDK as like a potential solution, just because this is sort of, it's nice. CDK is a little bit of an anti-pattern to infrastructure as code and codified configurations, because you don't want to have to like debug basically a variable expansion in your deployments. But for something like a code pipeline, you want the ease of that, and it's not directly in the runtime. So I kind of like this model of maybe some things using CDK while others using declarative infrastructure definitions.
Yeah, next week we'll talk about the development pipeline for CDK pipelines.
Oh my God! Trying to win the lightning round.
Yeah.
Maybe think it was a DevOps CLI command that just gives you a DevOps ML team that just does all your DevOps for you.
Oh, I'd pay good money for that.
Yeah, I see the abuse of these tools, and like people looking at their Terraform code and can't figure out what's going on, why their environment isn't working, and then they go into the pipeline and like somebody has written in conditionals into the actual pipeline based on what environment it is or other crazy features that actually define the environment instead of the infrastructure as code configuration files.
They had a story that was use CDK, and then they realized it was hard. So they just statically set all the variables what they wanted in the construct, and then just let that work. That's perfect.
Yeah. Works. It works for now. Just don't change anything. Yeah. And then when I quit, don't try to. You're never going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah. Code reviews are important.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we first talked about the G4 AD instance classes, we did mention that they are all big servers. And so previously you could only get the the G4 ADs in a 1 GPU, 16 vCPU, and 64 gig of memory configuration. And of course, bigger than that as well, multiple GPUs, etc. But now, today, you can also get a 4 CPU with 16 gigs of memory option and an 8 vCPU with 32 gigs of memory option, which make these instances ideal for game streaming and virtual workstation use cases that create visual effects and animations and run design and engineering applications. And with the new sizes, customers can save up to 25% by not being over-provisioned with the only option they had previously with these new fantastic options. You guys are stunned with these G4 ADs. I see it. See it in all your faces.
Every time it's just like it's another acronym, and then all I want to know is how much does it cost to run my workload? And if it's cheaper, I'm all in. I don't care.
We were talking while you guys were all gone when Matt was here. We were talking about the complexities of the naming convention that, we used to make fun of Azure's naming convention for instances. And now AWS is just getting just as complicated in their naming convention, unfortunately. So it's just an unfortunate set of circumstances there.
I think it's less about the naming convention and just more about that when somebody else is completely managing the hardware and pretty much the operating system, not managing the operating system, but offering the operating system that runs on it. I don't care anymore. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's Intel. I don't care if it's AMD. I don't care if it's ARM. Is my workload run on it? And what's the total cost based on the total compute and RAM I need? And give me the lowest one and I'm in.
Sounds spoken like someone who uses Spot fleets and Kubernetes.
You're right. We do actually a lot.
Well, Nitro standardized a lot of that stuff, but still, if you use a mix of instance types in an app stack, it can be a real chore to figure out. Well, where are my disks going to be in the file system exactly? Is it XVDA or is it SDA or is it some other thing off? Is it mounted as an NVMe drive, but actually it's an EBS volume that looks like that because we're on Nitro? So. I mean, I like that they're moving towards a direction of standardization. I don't know. I mean, it would be nice if they had just like a cheat sheet for these things. G means graphics, A means AMD, D means disk optimized, N means network optimized. Like, where's the page that just says, this is like the decoder ring for the instance types?
Yeah, I mean, they should have one because there is one. All those letters and numbers mean something.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. New website. Someone make it.
There we go.
Should be hard just to be a feature on ec2instance.info. Just have the decoder ring there. So
we'll do a joke website that completely makes up completely other things for the numbers and letters involved. That could be a lot of fun.
That could be fun. All right. Well, moving on to GCP. Again, Magic Quadrant. Google was also in the Magic Quadrant. Then they squeaked into the Leader Quadrant. They're in the position which I would call we pay Gartner way too much money to not be included in the Leader Quadrant spot. They are definitely there, but they're just over the line on both completeness of vision and execution of vision. When some of the things that were interesting in this particular one, in the caution section for this one again, post-sale satisfaction, particularly around customer support, which I just happened to kind of go across the Reddit GCP subforums, and I was seeing some people talk about their support experiences, which sounded pretty awful. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're looking at going to the GCP route. And then, of course, they mentioned some of the other things around financial losses for GCP, which can't last forever. And then they did mention that incentives are there when you want to get onto the cloud, but then once you're there, those incentives sort of disappear pretty quickly, which is kind of interesting as well. But they did highlight their revenue growth and their growing enterprise mindshare, as well as rapid innovation in the Kubernetes space. So Google's got the right directional area, but again, they're kind of just squeaking into that leaders quadrant.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard the horror stories about post sales interaction with Google being a nightmare for years. So that's nothing really new. That it's just sort of continuing. It's clear where they're investing in the sales and building the business, trying to get those losses under control. Running the actual business is step 2.
Yeah, I mean they're getting the costs in line as we're talking about earnings, right? $1.2 billion to only $500 million loss, so they are on the right direction at least. So maybe they'll become profitable next year or two.
Yeah, if you do the math there, I mean they're probably about $1 billion in revenue away, which should be super easy to make. From break even. So it's looking really strong. These numbers actually, I was concerned before. These numbers make me a lot more confident in if I was going to bet on Google Cloud that it's going to be around.
Yeah. With them able to shrink losses, that's huge. So, well, in areas where losses are mounting, they have opened a new region in Melbourne, which is now officially open. This is the second region in Australia, joining the 26 existing regions globally connected via Google's high-performance networking, helping customers better serve their users and customers throughout the globe. With this new region, customers in Australia and New Zealand will benefit from low latency and high performance of their cloud-based workloads and data, which is good. And they also mentioned in this article, more subsea cables coming in the Australia, New Zealand area, which makes sense. So.
And there's always really good coffee.
Oh, is there? That's not something I knew was known for. I always like a coffee. From being a Seattleite originally, coffee and we like to talk to each other every morning. So I love a good cup of coffee. All right. Well, next up from Google is Cloud Build Private Pools, which is a secure CI/CD for your private network. And when they say private network here, they don't mean your network. They mean Google's network inside your VPC. So you can now take advantage of serverless build environments within your own private network at the new Cloud Build Private Pool feature. Cloud Build is, of course, a modernized CI/CD solution that is fully managed, secure, pay-as-you-go workers with no infrastructure to manage. Unlike Cloud Build, this actually works and is pretty good. So this is available to you now across 15 regions and allows you to build from private repos like GitHub Enterprise or public ones with hundreds of concurrent builds per pool and up to 15 different machine types to make your builds go super fast.
So is this to say that it would not connect to an on-prem sort of service or a dependency?
Well, you can put it in your VPC, and then because it's in your VPC, you can leverage the VPN routing and go back to your private data center. It just doesn't run in your private data center, which is sort of how it is worded when you start with this. But it does connect to your private GitHub repo in your environment over a VPN connection or whatever other method you've given it. And of course, then the build job itself runs inside your VPC, which is a security compliance issue for some people.
Yeah, I think that's the huge piece is that it's not a public service. So now you've got those nodes spinning up in your private network, makes things so much easier, especially if you've got sensitive IP.
I mean, I can't think of very many builds that I've been involved with where there wasn't sort of private data or private dependencies being accessed. So I'm sure this is a long-awaited feature for those using cloud build.
So are we now paying for our own compute for these builds, or were we paying for it before, but it was just shared tenancy? Or I don't understand.
You were paying for it before, but it was shared
Okay.
tenancy and then public service. So, I mean, there's a bunch of things that Google put in place to make sure that your code didn't mix in the runtime, and secure compute initiatives and stuff like that are all designed around this kind of fixes. But yeah, this just means that it's running in your VPC versus in their public.
That's interesting.
Basically, before it was in EC2 Classic.
Yeah, with a firewall around it.
Well, I mean, about that though, I would assume that Google are probably eating their own dog food to some extent and build a lot of their applications or services to be containerized. And so perhaps we'll see more and more of this from all the providers, allowing you to run those otherwise shared tenancy services in your own environments on your own infrastructure.
I think Google is actually a little late to that. Actually, you've been able to do that within Code Pipeline for a long time, and then even GitHub Actions now they offer an enterprise offering where you can run the compute in your own on your own infrastructure. So it's definitely happening, definitely coming.
Do you think it'll spread to other services? So I mean, database services, any other kind of managed service?
I mean, many of those already have this capability. So I think the databases, Cloud SQL stuff is already in your private VPC if you configure it that way.
And a lot of times, like, since it's, the ephemeral nature of CI/CD, workloads, like you want that to spin up and down to be very elastic and on demand. So it's not really something, unless you have a true security or compliance isolation sort of requirement, you don't really want to run that on dedicated hardware.
Well, if you have a compliance use case for Anthos, I have a feature for you. This is the new Anthos config management capability. They're introducing Google Config Controller, a hosted service provision and orchestrate Google Cloud resources. And this service offers an API endpoint that can provision, actuate, and orchestrate Google Cloud resources the same way it manages Kubernetes resources. You don't have to install or manage the component or be an expert in Kubernetes or GitOps, as Google Cloud will handle all of that for you. In addition to being able to be used for hybrid and multi-cloud Anthos configurations, it's also available for GKE as a standalone service. And GKE customers can take advantage of the config and policy automation in Google Cloud at a low incremental per cluster price. Development teams, of course, need stable and secure environments to provision apps quickly and deploy them easily. And platform teams often scramble to provision and configure the necessary infrastructure components, apps, and cloud services the same way. And that's only because the developers don't tell the platform team until it's too late. That's the only reason why that happens. But platform administrators have been handcrafting and partially automating configurations, new infrastructure as code languages, and tools for years. But yet configurations drift out of sync with production all the time. And that's because it's hard to describe what is wanted, create what is needed, and repair it when it's broken. So the declarative Kubernetes resource model, or KRM, reduces the toil with a consistent way to define and update your resources. Using the Anthos Configuration Manager makes it easy by adding pre-built opinionated config and policy automation, such as creating a secure landing zone or leveraging a GKA cluster from a blueprint. Config sync continuously reconciles the state of your registered clustered and resources, meaning that the changes will not be unvetted. Combined with Policy Controller, it's easy to create and enforce fully programmable policies across all of your connected clusters and manage all of that through GitOps, but somehow magically done for you by Google.
Well, it's instead of defining your infrastructure as like a configuration, you're defining the intent. And so they're very big on that in the Kubernetes model, where it's like you don't really know that it's a container running somewhere in Kubernetes. You're just defining the service, and it translates to a service in a pod through the declarative configuration. And so this is sort of expanding on that to be all Google Cloud resources, which is sort of I think this is bigger than it's really getting credit for, just because I feel like this is just as big as like defining infrastructure as code. This is the next model, which is
CloudFormation.
Well, this solves one of the big problems we've talked about with infrastructure code all the time is, sometimes if you're using, Cube config tools and you go make a change to your cluster, like how does that change then get put back into the code? And if Google's going to handle automatically synchronizing those changes back to the source code so that you have that, immutable source of truth for the cluster, that's great. So I mean, again, if it's doing some of that stuff, I think that's helpful, because there are some changes you do in an outage situation or in a thing that you don't want to lose, but you also forget about very easily.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, so this is exactly what this is saying. If you went and made a change in the Google console, it would be reverted by this, config management, Anthos config management solution. So like that's sort of the trick there, which is if you're going, it's you declare your intent through YAML, like everything. And then it's, anything that's changed outside of that intent is going to get stomped on. So it's an auto remediation of any of those manual changes.
What tool are you replacing that you're currently using today that this is better than?
It's not really a replacement tool. What it is if Terraform was consistently running, if you're constantly running an apply on Terraform, this would be akin to that. So you're not really replacing any of the existing tools. You're still defining your configuration. You're just defining an intent rather than specific configuration. So
if I spun up my infrastructure with Terraform, I'm not, and I turned this feature on, this isn't going to magically fix my Terraform code.
No. So you would, instead of defining your infrastructure in Terraform, you'd be defining it as a configuration in YAML for the Xanthos config management service.
Yeah. So this is a replacement for Terraform.
It is in the sense of that you're defining your configuration, but the selling point is more about that auto remediation than the actual.
Yeah. I get the selling point. And I think CloudFormation has a similar feature, a drift control feature.
It doesn't fix the drift though. Like that's the config.
It just warns
for CloudFormation. Yeah. It's for CloudFormation and Terraform. They both sort of just tell you what the changes will be, and then you can go and do a thing that will make it. This is taking the next step and actually fixing it.
Right, but this is that if you're going to standardize on this tool and you're going to standardize on infrastructure as code, then you're no longer going to use Terraform.
I suspect that you will use Terraform for all the stuff that this doesn't cover, and then all the things that you need to tie environments together. Because this is still very application-driven configuration management. So how do you get the network, that does the VPC peering between two different things, that kind of thing? I suspect.
I thought it was covering everything because they were talking about other services outside of Kubernetes.
It could. I don't know if it's fully featured, but it's how do you deploy the dev and when you're doing a dev deployment of versus a prod deployment of some of those interconnecting sort of resources. That's the challenge.
Well, if they're not pitching that now, my prediction for this year is that this tool is aimed at replacing Terraform as their default configuration management IAC tool.
I would agree with that.
That's a lot of cost. They've invested a ton in Terraform to do all the things they do with Terraform now. That'd be a big pivot.
Yeah.
Maybe they got tired of all the backward, breaking changes.
Yeah,
they were tired of waiting for Terraform 1.0 too, huh?
Well, maybe they just needed a stopgap, and they were willing to invest a ton of throwaway money to make sure that customers had a good IAC tool until their tool was ready.
Well, again, maybe Google says, look, we want to give you a choice, and there's multiple solutions. You can use Terraform, which will still support as a first-class citizen, but we also have this new shiny thing. Go use this if you want something better.
Yeah, I like choice.
Well, the other option may be not so much they're trying to replace Terraform, but it also kind of provides an abstraction away from the implementation. So you can still define an intent, and they could still provide the services that support your application, but you don't necessarily need to know what that's going to look like ahead of time anymore. You tell it what it needs to do, not how to do it.
Fair enough. For listeners of the Cloud Pod, you know that I have no love for Microsoft Active Directory, which is why I'm excited to tell you about the leading cloud directory platform, JumpCloud. JumpCloud makes it easy to solve today's IT challenges by unifying device and user management through a single pane of glass, enabling you to securely manage your users and devices and perform common tasks like onboarding and offboarding remote workers. With JumpCloud, you no longer need to implement an on-premise Active Directory infrastructure or additional tooling to scope a user's access, and you can ensure that the user is coming from trusted devices and networks. Enabling JumpCloud's zero-trust solutions improves the security and compliance of your network, ensuring users have access only to the services they need when they need them. To start your organization's move to a modern, secure hybrid work model, try JumpCloud for free today at cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. That's cloud.jumpcloud.com/thecloudpod. All right, let's move on to Azure. Again, Azure in the Magic Quadrant. I don't know if you guys knew that. They are solid number 2, as we talked about a little bit earlier, directly below AWS, only failing to execute. There are a couple interesting things here that were mentioned as cautions, resiliency, which we've talked about ad nauseum here at the podcast, following the regular CTO blog post about their resiliency strategy and how they're trying to get that to be improved, as well as just the commercial complexities of their licensing and contracting as two big areas of focus or cautions for the Azure cloud. But overall, they said the broad appeal of Microsoft is always a win, as well as the strong enterprise relationships they already have today.
Heavy emphasis on the existing relationships, I think. I think they've always done a really good job capitalizing on that.
And making sure they give you lots of credits. They have the marketing dollars to throw at you to make you pivot to Azure. It's always a big deal.
Yeah, the leverage over licensing terms, though, is
not always great.
A little unfair.
Yeah. The one caution that stuck out to me the most was novel innovations as a caution. And they say Azure's novel innovation in the market for infrastructure as a service and platform as a service relative to its competitors over the past year were substantially less appealing. Which, if we just look at how many Azure stories we've talked about this year alone, definitely lacking in the announcements area and really innovation perspective. So I completely agree with Gardner on that particular one.
Yeah, and I think that might be due to the fact that all of these competitors, you don't have to be novel. You need to catch up.
Yeah, but I would say Google's getting market share because they are able to leapfrog everyone else on Kubernetes and on big data ML. So, what's Azure's killer feature that makes me go Azure other than I already have a relationship and I already have draconian licensing terms? I'll just make it easy for myself and go with the new one. That's not selling as a technologist. It's not a selling point to me. But what's their big play that I'm getting out of it?
Well, it's big play premium.
Ultra premium, Jonathan, of course. All right. Well, if you are using VMware still, you are probably very familiar with VMware Site Recovery Manager, which is a DR capability for VMware that allows you to orchestrate your DR recovery, which is really nice to be able to say, hey, I want things like my AD controller to start up before my app server or my database server to start up before my other servers. And SRM has been around for years now and is a very popular solution overall for your BCP and DR. And now you can use SRM with Azure VMware in a few different scenarios. First, from on-premise VMware to Azure VMware solution for DR, which is actually really nice. So you can basically set up Azure as your SRM DR location, and it'll handle all the orchestration of VMware on Azure to make that happen, as well as a primary Azure VMware solution on Azure to a secondary Azure VMware solution, again on Azure, allowing you to DR simply with VMware all the way across the stack. SRM, of course, is licensed and supported directly from VMware, but you can use your existing license key through the Azure portal. So you would have I think you have to have a VMware EA agreement to do this, if I recall. But it is a great feature if you have it, and something I recommend highly for teams struggling with the DR orchestration piece.
Do you think the Azure cloud is actually running on VMware, or do you think they've provided some kind of compatibility between VMware as deployed on-prem and whatever the implementation is for Azure?
No, I believe the Azure cloud is running on Hyper-V. But I think they do have a partnership with VMware. They do offer, just like Amazon does, just like Google does, where they provide bare metal to Azure to VMware, and then VMware can package it up into their services and provide that to you as a service on top of bare metal. Mm. Yes, no, I assume the rest of the VMware of the Azure world is all Hyper-V or AKS at this point.
Hyper-V, wow, I haven't actually used Hyper-V in quite a long time.
I did once, and I don't like to talk about it.
Yep.
Well, the blob storage at Azure is now getting immutable storage capability with versioning. Azure Blob Storage is now is immutable storage, provides the capability to store data in a write once, read many capability or worm capability. And once data is written, it becomes non-erasable and non-modifiable, and you can set a retention period so that files can be deleted until after that period expires. This is in preview for you in France and Canadian regions. So if you're in the US wanting worm drives, you're out of luck. Move to France.
Yeah, write once, read many, pay forever.
Yeah, I want to be the person who sells these. I want to be the sales guy who gets to sell this.
Oh, there was EMC sales reps back in the day who made a fortune on worm drives. People buying them, not knowing what they were getting. And then, I filled it up, and then now my policy says I can't delete the data. And you're like, yep, you need more SAN storage now. But what? Yeah.
It's weird that it would be France, though, especially because there are such strict rules in the EU around personal data. And if a person says, hey, I need you to purge my data, you have to purge their data. And so, if customer data is now sitting on worm drives, then what do you do?
I mean, there are exceptions for the data that typically falls underneath PII and data protection. Like, banks are typically immune from that because of the need to maintain financial records, et cetera. So again, I think your use case is what drives if you can use worm or not. But I assume that the reason why France and Canadian regions were the first two is because that's where a very large customer was yelling, "Hey, we need this capability." And assume it will come out to the rest of the regions. It's generally available later in the year. Well, if you're tired of paying a fortune for your backups of SQL Server or any other Azure backups, you can now use archive storage with the new archive tier for VM and SQL servers. Alongside moving your long-term retention points to the low-cost archive tier, you can also perform restores from archive tier using a simplified integrated approach. And with this change, your backup storage now has two tiers, Vault Standard and Vault Archive. By moving your backup data from Vault Standard to Vault Archive, Azure Backup converts your forever incremental data into full backups. And this may result in increasing your overall gigabytes of usage, but the cost will be reduced from the lower tier. And I haven't done the math on this, but I bet it's not that much cheaper because of that going from incremental to fulls.
I don't like that at all. I don't want my cloud provider to start opening my backup files and moving data around and merging things like that. That's completely off limits. That should not be a thing.
I bet it doesn't work with encryption keys, so you can solve this problem.
Right.
Actually, it reminds me of a notice I got from Google a couple of days ago. Apparently, I've got a file in Google Drive which they're going to apply a security update to. I have no idea what that file is yet. I haven't clicked on it. It looks like a zip file, so I don't know what's in the file. Maybe I've got something like the iCar virus in there or something. I don't know. But the fact that the cloud storage provider is now going to open up my personal document, make a change, and then save a new version of it kind of pisses me off.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily opening the file. They're just changing the metadata on the file. And I've been getting a lot of those as well for particularly files that were in my organization that I shared, right? So the CloudPod has a Google Cloud organization. We have Google Drive. We use it to share files between our vendors and us, et cetera. And so, there are times where I've wanted to share those files, but sometimes people do that a little bit too broadly, and they'll say, like, the entire domain of Microsoft.com can access this file, when they only wanted your sales rep to have access to it, for example. That can cause all kinds of problems. And so that's a lot of the change notification I've been getting recently is about them changing the organizational sharing settings, basically, for Google Drive. But Google Drive, it seems like it's getting a lot of major overhauls recently, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on over there in that world, but they're definitely doing something.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess, sorry for the tangent. I guess getting back to the story, though, maybe Microsoft should realize that the incremental and full backup strategy for cloud-hosted SQL Server just maybe isn't the right tool for the job, and they need to come up with a better way.
I mean, I don't really understand why I need to convert them from incremental to fulls. As long as I have the control chain of all the backups and all the incrementals, I should be able to just keep that going. I shouldn't necessarily need to convert them. So I'm not really sure why they made that choice for Azure Backup, but they did. Well, the next one up is the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare is expanding its Azure Healthcare APIs. And so previously we talked about the Azure API for FIR, which was Azure was definitely the leader in the space coming out with the FIR API first, although Amazon and Google have rapidly caught up with them. And so it's time, of course, to rename the product and add new capabilities to confuse the market. And so, first of all, the Azure API for FIR is now known as the Azure Healthcare APIs, which are purpose-built for the healthcare industry and protected health information data. The Azure Healthcare APIs enable customers to ingest, manage, and persist data in the Microsoft Cloud for healthcare. And the Azure Healthcare API now supports the ability to handle structured data, unstructured data, imaging data in DICOM formats, and biometric data from devices, all ingest via IoT into the FIR capability of the API. All this technology allows you to answer simple questions like, give me all the medications prescribed and all the CT scan documents that have and their associated radiology reports for any patient older than 45 that had a diagnosis of osteochondroma over the last 2 years, which will then lead you to a lawsuit probably somewhere as you find out that your drug was causing cancer, which is never good. There's also new connectors for Azure Healthcare APIs supporting Azure Data Science VMs and Azure Synapse, all available in the latest version of the Azure Healthcare API.
And someone said they're not novel.
In the healthcare space, they are.
It's pretty cool stuff. Real value add to people trying to get things done.
Yeah, I mean, and especially considering all the different vendors who are involved in a hospital, just being able to have a standard data format with FIR is huge. And then being able to now power that with the cloud. There are lots of really interesting use cases that get unlocked with this solution.
I just think it's funny that there's been like millions of searches for FIR, FURR, as people are trying to search for documentation on how to use this thing. So they're like, oh, screw it. We'll just change the name.
I hope if you're in the healthcare space that you know it's FHIR versus the other FIR. But you never know. It might be maybe the whole driver for it is we can't find the FIR docs. Just like I can't find the chef samples either, because I always get food.
And distracted right now. I'm watching a cooking show. I've just wasted 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and that's how I didn't deliver on that server you needed, because I was cooking, watching the Great British Bake Off.
Not my fault.
All right. Well, Oracle, of course, is here because they're also in the Magic Quadrant, but not in the Leader Quadrant. They were in the Visionary Quadrant behind Alibaba, which is ouch. That's so rough. Apparently, Oracle has many strengths, including market responsiveness. Apparently, they're reacting to what the market wants from them. They have critical infrastructure for running Oracle, as well as a very distributed cloud, which apparently is a benefit of them. But they have some cautions for them, which includes nascent adoption, which is code for no one's buying it. Polarizing presence, because Oracle's the evil people, and a very heavy lift and shift focus, because Oracle doesn't want cloud native, because cloud native doesn't include the word Oracle database in it, which makes sense. So Carter pegged them pretty well on this one, I think. Although they gave them more credit for distributed cloud than I think they should have, because again, those are just garages somewhere that have a couple racks of OCI infrastructure running inside them.
So they're high on vision. They're in the Visionary Quadrant, which is incredible to me. I think they would be in the exact opposite quadrant. They're a huge company, tons of ability to execute if they have the right vision. And so far, to date, they haven't had the right vision, which is why they're behind. And I think that although I agree with you that the strengths and cautions are pretty good, I think they should be in the opposite quadrant.
I'm sorry, I said Visionary, but they're actually in the niche players space. Alibaba's in Visionaries.
Gotcha.
Read my note wrong.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, so they're in the niche player space. And then, of course, behind them is IBM and Tencent Cloud. So, I mean, Oracle's beating IBM, losing to everybody else. Yeah, the old days, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
I've been watching the IBM Cloud ads during some of the Olympics things I've recorded and then watched again. And every time they come on, I kind of point to the TV screen, like, that is a lie.
Surprised there's not Oracle commercials, but Unbreakable Cloud that you could, scream at.
Oh my God. Yeah. The Unbreakable.
The autonomous stuff as well. Yeah.
Autonomous, amazing cloud. Yes. Of the Oracle. Sure. All right. Well, let's move on to lightning round. Speaking of lightning round topics.
Let's do it. AWS Service Catalog announces improvements to the Getting Started library.
Anything that makes people want to use Service Catalog more is not a win in my book.
Yeah, this is just code for no one was using it, so they had to like pour the gas on to the Getting Started pages. Okay.
You have to deploy the library with Service Catalog, though. Man, that'd be a nightmare.
I don't understand why you guys hate Service Catalog so much. It's so great.
Because we have to build the Service Catalog underneath it all. That's the problem.
But if you're a consumer of the Service Catalog, you probably like it just fine. But as a builder of it, you're like, I hate everything about this.
Yeah, of course we'll make it purple now. Yeah, let me just do a whole new function. Yeah.
Have this whole catalog of things that you can deploy, and then have all these constraints to say, but he's not allowed to deploy that, and you're not allowed to deploy this, and it all costs too much. So let's take all the privileges away again. It's just not. Proton for the win.
Amazon Code Guru Profiler announces new automated onboarding process for AWS Lambda functions.
I'm disappointed they didn't call this the Guru onboarding process, because it would have fit the name better.
Oh no! So
this is kind of a Rochambeau. Okay, this is kind of a cost cutting for Code Guru, right? Because you can only your Lambda sizes are already limited. So this is one way to make Code Guru Profiler a little cheaper if you only do Lambda. Aren't you glad you waited for that?
I was going to say something positive for a change. I was going to say serverless. They should call it effortless anymore.
Nice.
Amazon CloudWatch adds support for trimmed mean statistics.
I didn't know CloudWatch was a mean girl. It's interesting.
Oh. And Amazon Elastic Block Store now supports idempotent volume creation.
There's only one idempotent joke, and it's funny no matter how many times you tell it.
Boo.
Is that all we got?
That's
I got nothing on
what,
that.
I'm going to follow that? I don't know.
You could follow that. AWS Control Tower announces improvements to guardrail naming and descriptions.
You mean people didn't like rules that said disallow that were going to automatically run in their accounts, and you decided to name the detect instead? Well,
yeah.
About time.
Yeah, improvements is the Amazon way of saying corrections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
really.
We fixed the faux pas.
Yeah.
Amazon Workspaces adds support for USB YubiKey U2F authentication on PCOIP Windows Workspaces.
So I can send my YubiKey code on Slack more often? Great. Appreciate that.
And agents can now set their next status while still on an active contact in Amazon Connect.
So now I can say I quit in my next status after this call that I was just on. That was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I quit, but I'll finish up this call first. Yeah.
I need to turn to my pee bottle.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Google introduces improved maintenance policies for cloud memory store.
That's because they had to fix that cloud Alzheimer's problem they had because it kept losing all the data. So you had to maintain it.
Oh. I already forgot this service even existed.
Memory store?
Mm-hmm. Alzheimer's.
Yeah. It took me a second. I'm here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's really good. I totally didn't get it.
Took me a little bit. I was like, what? Oh. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Amazon Redshift simplifies the use of JDBC, ODBC with authentication profile.
Nothing about that sentence was simple. No. JDBC, ODBC, and authentication profiles? Yeah. Nothing that's simple, no matter what they do.
No sirree. And AWS Config has support for AWS backup services.
There's a poor engineer that's the story behind this. Like, wait, why did you turn off the backup service?
Yeah, seriously, right?
Right.
Do you remember when you did it? Yeah.
Now we know. A little alert pops into Slack. Someone just turned off the backup.
Someone's written an RCI. I know I've written an RCI very similar to that before to a customer. Yeah, backups haven't run since.
Yeah. Not good.
Bad news is we're down. Good news, we have a backup. Bad news, it's from 2016.
Yeah. Have you done much with the system since then? I'm not really sure. Like, have you recorded every change you made to the database since we looked through the last backup?
Yeah, you can just replay the logs. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. All good.
And Amazon EKS now supports Multus.
I hope EKS recovers soon. Sounds really bad.
Right? Yeah.
Oh.
That's the end of our round, gentlemen. The winner has to go to the one that went over my head.
Nice.
On Cloud Memory Store.
I was going to say, which one? Like,
never getting a point again. You. Never again.
That's funny.
Jonathan's ending year score is going to be 9.
And that means that Ryan has a chance because he's at 7 right now. So he's only 2 off. So, when Matt was filling in for you, he decided to try to mix it up by randomizing the order of the lightning round. And then, it's mostly awful because, then he forgot one last time around, which is pretty hilarious. But it did keep us on our toes because we were not sure where we were going next because he would just pick randomly.
The last thing you need is to
give
you guys more challenge. I know. The only reason I'm the host of Lightning Round is because there's no way I would have anything to say about anything ever.
Well, it's also a disparaging thing. We don't want to disparage anybody by making fun of their announcements. So
It's true. I have got 3 non-disparagement contracts with the 3 main vendors of our discussions.
Yeah. So if you want Peter's real opinion on some technology, you just need to get him, a beer at reInvent.
Beer with no electronic recording devices. And you'll hear it all.
You hear it all. All the dirty laundry. Well, things are still coming up very quickly, and I have a special treat for you guys. So, of course, the Amazon Summit, which is competing with Reinforce, August 24th, 26th is happening, and then Reinforce, August 24th, 25th in Houston. And there's 5 reasons why this blog post author is excited for reInvent. This is from Clark Rogers, who's on the blogging team. And so he gave us 5 reasons you should be excited. And I'll give those to you now and see if they sway any of you guys to go to Houston and see this live in person. So first up is Stephen Schmidt's keynote with special guest speaker, AWS CEO Adam Slipsky. So this is Adam Slipsky's first presentation as CEO. You can see it live and in person in August in Houston. Does that tickle your guys' fancies to go see that?
No.
Okay.
Only because I assume that I can also watch it via
you'll watch it.
Streaming video of some sort.
Correct. Number 2 is the leadership sessions from some of the top security, risk, and compliance minds at AWS. The session covers the latest in data protection and privacy, governance, risk and compliance, identity access management, and
Let me bust out the popcorn for
Yeah, but they have like vibrating chairs to keep the attendees awake.
Yeah. It better be like shocking, like if they detect your head movement, you get a zap.
Remember, so when we went to the first Reinforce in Boston, we went to this presentation, they started explaining math proofs to us. And like it took, I was like, I needed more coffee before this session because this is a rough bit of math we're working through here. So
to be fair, that was the best session I attended.
It was the best session, but I also had the hardest time staying awake in it. Next up is the Security Jam, which of course are gamified security exercises based on real-world security problems, and they're offering 2 gamified learning opportunities that reinforce AWS Security Jam and Capture the Flag.
I do like those.
I do like those too.
Would sway me.
I mean, like if that one plus maybe one other one, I might be interested. Next up is the Security Learning Hub, which where you can learn at your own pace about the subjects you are interested in from the experts who either built or regularly support your favorite AWS security solutions.
I mean, if that's not offered virtually, I'm going to riot. But,
I mean, like, if you really want this, just talk to your TAM and say, hey, I really want to talk to the person who built this because I don't understand how it works. And look at that person on the phone with you.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to a conference for that, as long as you have enterprise support. So, maybe enterprise support, fly you to Houston. It's probably cheaper to fly you to Houston, but, make your choices.
And
then, of course, the fifth and final reason is networking. Meet with your peers, customers, AWS partners, and AWS security experts under one roof, and yes, in person, and hopefully not get Delta variant while you're there. So there you go. Those are your 5 top reasons to go see Reinforce. I don't know if any of that swayed you. It did not for me either. So
it's so simple. There was a band in my college that figured this out. Like, I don't want to date myself, but what was that, like 20 plus years ago? They named their band Free Beer. And everybody showed up to all the bars they played at. It's so simple.
So simple. Yeah. So simple. Yeah. Until the bar is angry because everyone's thinking they're getting a free beer and they're not. Yeah. Well, then Amazon also added a new Amazon Storage Day. September 2nd will be the 2021 version of AWS Storage Day, where they'll talk to you about all things exciting related to EBS, S3, and all the other storage technologies you may be interested in. And then, of course, in person, live, and improved in November 29th to December 3rd, Amazon reInvent in Las Vegas. Hopefully, still nervous about that one. I'm not sure it's going to happen still.
Booster shot. I'm hoping for a booster before we get there.
Things have taken a turn for the worst on the whole reInvent in Vegas thing, I think, with Delta variant just through the roof. Then, of course, Google Cloud Next is available to register now. Virtual conference in October 12th through the 14th, as well as many others. Check the show notes for all the details on all the cool conferences that are coming up, including SneakConf, KubeConf, HashiConf. All the confs are all available to you in the show notes, so do check that out.
My prediction is that reInvent will require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within 48 hours.
Is that even enough anymore?
I just hope for the vaccination requirement. The proof of negative is not really helpful.
So yeah, I know, but I think they have to give themselves the out for the people who can't take the vaccination.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm certain my statistics are skewed because pretty much everybody I know is the type of person who would get vaccinated, but it seems I know a lot of people who are getting COVID right now vaccinated. So I'm definitely concerned about vaccination being the guarantee that we're going to have reInvent.
I mean,
so, without booster shot, maybe booster.
The vaccination won't prevent getting it. And even the booster won't prevent you from getting it. It just prevents you from getting to the point you are sick enough to die in a hospital. Yeah, no, it's
100% on board with vaccinations.
And you're also helping all those other people who have not got vaccinated, hopefully.
No, 100% on board with them. I don't know if it's enough to warrant reInvent happening.
Yeah, especially with Vegas, they just went back to masks required indoors. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Vegas. 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said, yeah, it's going to happen. Now I'm like, I'm not so sure. So we'll see how the Delta variant continues to take over in the United States here and across the world. So, all right, well, that's great for another fantastic week here in the cloud. We'll see you next week.
See you later.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See you then.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
And that is the week in the cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Foghorn Consulting and Jump Cloud. Check out our website, the home of the Cloud Pod, where you can join our newsletter, Slack team, and send feedback or ask questions at thecloudpod.net or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.